in video games, characters have those little health bars? With every punch, kick, or strike, with every stressor, the health bar goes down. Well, you can think of newborn chicks as having health bars too. With every stressor, they lose a little bit of their health. But then with subsequent proper care, they can recover some of that lost health. And every chick has stressors. Even just the exhaustive act of hatching itself is a stressor. And in the natural world, baby chicks recover from stresses pretty quickly because of two things. One, they have the tender, loving care of their mama hen. And two, they eat early and they eat often. And that gives them the energy they need to deal with any stressors they do have. But chicks who are incubated artificially, then start their life out in the absolute chaos of a hatchery, manhandled through sorting and processing, shipped through the mail, by truck, and by plane, frequently through extremes of temperature and humidity. Sometimes across the entire country, taking up to 3 days to get to your local post office. And then finally to you. There they are. Oh my God, they're so cute. Well, needless to say, that adds a whole new dimension of stresses for your babies. And by the time they do get to you, their health bar could be alarmingly low. And because of that, I actually recommend a little different care for shipped chicks than I do for non-shipped chicks. And in this video, we're gonna look at the 6 things you need to do in your home brooder to ensure that your shipped chicks will recover from that stressful shipping process. But first, you need to understand that the one medicine your chicks need most, the one thing they need to restore that health bar, is food, and lots of it. Hi, sweetie! You're interrupting! You're a welcome interruption. Yeah. That's right. Oh, right in the mouth. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes. You ready to go? Bye, Pippa. We know from the research science on shipped chicks that by the time they get to you, they tend to be sometimes severely underweight and beyond hungry, sometimes even on the edge of starvation. And that's because chicks aren't meant to go 2 to 3 days without eating after hatch. And although most shipped chicks do survive during shipping, thank goodness, that food deprivation is very unhealthy and unnatural for them. If this is the first you're hearing about this because you're thinking, wait, doesn't that internal egg yolk sac they're born with, doesn't that nourish them for 3 whole days? The answer is no. That internal egg yolk sac is actually meant to be a complement to feed, not a substitute for feed. And if you want to know more about that and the science behind it, I just put a video out on that topic, so I will link to it below. But the takeaway is you need to do everything you can to get your newly arrived shipped chicks to ingest the large amount of feed that they need. So that's the goal of all 6 of these brooder recommendations I'm gonna give you. starting with number 1. Get your brooder temperature right. In the last video I put out, I talked about how shipped chicks may actually require more heat than non-shipped chicks do. And this is because the research shows us not only are shipped chicks ravenously hungry, but they're also cold. Because when chicks are deprived of food, their core body temperature actually goes down as a result. And that means we need to be really careful that our brooders aren't too cold. If you're using a heat lamp for your brooder heat source, this is already taken care of for you. Just follow the instructions on your heat lamp and your space should be warm enough. However, if you're using a brooder heating plate, like I always do, I recommend that you also crank that ambient temperature up. Get that ambient temperature to 95 degrees if you can. And if you can't get it that high, because that's not gonna always be practical for all of us, so if you can't get it that high, just get your room temperature as warm as you can with your space heater. Leave that ambient temperature high at 95 degrees for just 3 to 4 hours, but be keeping a constant eye on your chicks to make sure that they're not overheating. But otherwise, if everyone's eating and acting normally, then you can start gradually lowering that temperature. I recommend another 3 to 4 hours at 90 degrees. If all is well, if everybody's warm and everybody's eating and drinking, then you can lower it further to 85 degrees. I'd leave it there for a few days at 85 degrees and then just slowly lower your ambient temperature more, either on a weekly basis or a couple times a week. Number 2, give your chicks warm, not cool water. This is tied to number 1. We know that shipped chicks have a lower body temperature than what is ideal for baby chicks. We know they're underweight, that they've depleted most of their resources. So the last thing we want is for our baby chicks to drink cold water and become even more chilled. Number 3, use an open feeder and an open waterer. And what I mean by open is you just want containers that show the food and the water. So none of these no-waste feeders where chicks have to stick their head inside to even see the food. None of these nipple waters where chicks have to learn to press a lever and then only a tiny bit of water comes out. These accessories are totally fine if you want to use them later, but starting out, you want to make eating and drinking as easy as possible for your shipped chicks. Remember, the goal is to get your chicks food and water as early as possible and as often as possible until you know they're doing really well. Number 4, sprinkle food all over the frickin' place. Oh, hi, Stella. Come up. Hi, beautiful. Here's a super interesting fact about chicks. They don't innately know that food relieves hunger. They actually have to learn that, and they also have to learn how to eat, how to pick things up with their beaks, how to swallow. And in the natural world, a mother hen would help them with this, and they would learn and practice all of this within those first 72 hours of life. So unfortunately, shipped chicks who spend those first 72 hours of their life in a hatchery and then in a dark box, they are way behind on this, which means we need to accelerate their learning period as best we can. And the easiest way to do this is to make food available everywhere by sprinkling it all over their brooder. Your young chicks will likely eat that scattered feed more readily than they will the feed from a feeder. There was actually a study done that confirms that, believe it or not. So spread that feed everywhere, even under the brooder plate, maybe even especially under the brooder plate if they're spending a lot of time there. And yes, they will poop on that feed and you will need to replace that floor material more often, but remember, the priority here is to get them eating and to get them eating a lot. Everything else is secondary. Hello, are you helping with the video? Number 5, leave the lights on for the first week. If you're using a heat lamp, the heat lamp itself is a light, so you've got that covered. But if you're using a brooder heating plate, then leave that light on overnight. It doesn't have to be bright overhead lights. In fact, it's better if it's not. That can be really overstimulating for young chicks. Just a simple dim lamp can work really well overnight. All they need is just enough light to be able to see around the brooder so that they can eat 24/7 if they want to. Number 6, train your chicks to eat and drink. If you have food spread around everywhere, your chicks will likely start to eat on their own pretty quickly if they're not too stressed. But I always recommend that you tap at the food on the ground to get them interested in it like a mama hen would. I also highly recommend getting a hard heat mat like this one. And you'll want to just sprinkle food on the heat mat, tap it. Why don't we peck around a little bit more first, huh? Chicks love an exaggerated tapping motion and an exaggerated tapping noise. They're innately attracted to that. This mimics what mama hens do with their heads and necks. And the tapping sound mimics the rhythmic tidbitting noise that mama hens make. So this heat mat is just perfect for shipped chicks. It gives them that extra warmth that they need, and it highly encourages eating. As for drinking, when you first put your shipped chicks in your brooder, pick each one up and then just put the very tip of their little beak in the water until they open and close their mouth one time. That teaches them that the water is there and that this is something that goes in their mouths. Lastly, you should know that the majority of shipped chicks do arrive in decent health. But there's always the risk that you'll be one of the unlucky ones who ends up with the really unlucky chicks who are on the brink of death. It's not the norm, but it's not rare either. I receive multiple emails every year from people who received shipped chicks in really bad shape. Their health bars just got way too low. And if you get chicks in that condition, sometimes there's just nothing you can do. They're just too far gone. But other times, these 6 simple brooder tips you learned here just might save their lives. And even if your chicks do arrive in good condition, they'll be a whole lot more comfortable if you follow the tips you've learned here. You coming over? Hi. If you like this natural approach to raising chicks, you'll want to check out Mama Hen's Guide to Raising Spoiled Rotten Chicks. This is my pre-recorded pay what you want video course that teaches you how to raise chicks as naturally as possible, just like a mama hen would. So I'll leave a link for that video course in the description below. Best of luck with your shipped chicks and happy chickening!